Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin from the Modern Observer Group, and with me as always is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing great. How about you, Eric?
I'm doing fantastic.
All ready for the eclipse this afternoon?
We're already, as we record this, we are preparing for the solar eclipse, which by the time this gets posted and you're listening to it will have already passed. And we hope you got a great view of it and remembered not to stare directly at it.
Yes, and I have my flashlight ready to look at my papers while it happens.
There you go. All right. And today we're going to talk about lessons learned. You know, what do we know now that we wish we had known when we started out? And lessons that you should learn early on that'll make it easier for you to move forward. And we all have these things, these aha moments that we really wish, oh my God, if I had known that when I started, it would have made things so much easier. And even some things that we do that we don't realize the effect of. And I'll give you an example of this. My first job back when I was in high school was that of a camp counselor. And there was another camp counselor. He used to do everything he could to get the kids to like him. And I had made the decision, I didn't care if the kids liked me. I just wanted them to have enough respect for me that they did what I told them and, would respond when I told them what to do. Because for the most part, when I told them to do something, there was a good reason for it, either to keep them safe or to keep them moving on to the next activity, whatever it was. So I decided that was more important to me. Well, it wasn't until I had left that job that I found out that the reason the kids liked me so much and liked me more than this counselor that was doing everything he could to get them to like him is because I wasn't trying to get them to like me. They realized that everything I was doing was for their benefit, and they liked that. Now, I didn't know that at the time. It turns out I had made the right decision, fortunately. But it's one of those things that if you know that's going to be the result, you can make that decision on purpose.
Yeah, a lot of times people are going to see right through you if you're just trying to make yourself popular and that kind of thing. And if you're in the workplace and so on, I'm sure a lot of people have tried to smooth up to a boss that they don't like and so on and so forth just to move ahead and so on. And it's definitely not the way to go about things. And, as you said, people are going to respect you just for being your genuine self, no matter what happens. And if you are trying to advance with a boss that you can't stand anyway, you should be looking for something else to do.
Right. Yeah, it becomes very obvious as you get older and you go through more that it's more important what you think of yourself than what other people think of you. And starting out, that's very difficult to accept. You want to fit in, you want to be liked. And as it turns out, the best way to do that is not to try to do that. And just do what you do best and take actions that make you like yourself and that you can be proud of.
Yeah, and I think, a really big theme that we're talking about today, because you and I have had a little bit of experience that we can look back upon, is we're really able to put things in perspective. Because, if you look at the way that we're brought up with these expectations, going to school and this and that, whatever, there's a whole lot of pressure on kids growing up. There's a whole lot of pressure on people in school to get jobs and so on and so forth. And the lesson from that is that, as you were saying, what other people are expecting of you and so on and so forth, that's not the main thing. And the world does not revolve based upon jobs and money and so on and so forth. You have to like yourself and be working on that also. So it's not that that's not important, but putting things in perspective, you can't control how other people think about you. So all you can be is your genuine self. And believe me, there's going to be a whole lot of people out there that like and love you because that's what you're doing.
Exactly. If you like yourself and you're doing things that make you proud, that comes through and other people see that. And that's something, it makes your life so much easier if you learn that early on. Unfortunately, most of us, myself included, don't learn it early on. We learned it later.
Yeah, and a whole lot of people out there who are parenting kids right now, hopefully a lot of parents are listening to this. It's a perspective that you really got to take a look at. Just because that's the way we've always been brought up since before the Bible was written doesn't mean that's the proper way to do things. We've always been a material-based world, and if you look back at all the problems that have been caused really throughout humanity, it's really just forcing opinions on each other and based upon material things and so on and so forth, that when you really, really look at it, should not be the priority. And so it's really, really important to just take a deep breath, appreciate the person in the mirror, appreciate the people living with you and that kind of thing. And if you can bring people up on a positive based thing, realizing that we're all going to get through this together, that's the way to do it. And it is an option for parents, and it's an option for everybody looking in the mirror. And, obviously that's something that we both teach right now, along with the business things that we're talking about. It's all perspective, but you got to start from that standpoint rather than worrying about what the world is going to give you and what the world thinks of you, because you can't control that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Another lesson I learned that I wish I had understood early on is that the devil is in the details. Now, I remember growing up, a friend of mine's father used to build furniture. And I remember him building this bookcase. And he spent time, making it perfect and polishing it and sanding it. And he spent just as much time on the back as he did on the front. Now, the back was going against a wall. Nobody was ever going to see that. But he knew it was there. And he took pride in the details, even those that nobody was going to see. And I didn't appreciate that at the time. I didn't even understand it. Now, growing up, as I started learning more, and I actually read the Steve Jobs biography by Walter Isaacson, they talked about the detail that they put inside the original Mac. And the fact that the first Mac actually had the signatures of the team that developed it inside. And again, they knew nobody was ever going to see this, but they spent just as much time designing where each circuit board was going to go and each detail of it that nobody would see. And now I understand, that little detail work is really important because it makes the difference between a good job and a great job. And it makes the difference in the results you get. Because those little details that you leave out can snowball into larger problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a lesson in life too. I mean, if you develop a habit of paying attention to details that way, you're going to apply it to different areas of your life. And, people talk a lot about not having enough time to do this and time to do that. People who pay attention to that are investing now to avoid wasting a whole lot of time for themselves and others down the road.
Right, because when you pay attention to the details up front, it avoids all sorts of problems later. It takes less time to do something right the first time than it does to fix it later.
Yeah, I'm reading like a tip sheet here as far as 40 lessons learned the hard way and so on and so forth. And one of the things that you're actually talking about is individual goals. And one of them says goals are the secret to success. And being detailed about something is a goal to make sure something turns out proper.
It certainly is. I mean, it's something we can all strive for. But because we all get so overwhelmed with how many things that we have to do, and the lack of time and our split focus, we tend to forget to pay attention to those details. We go, well, nobody's going to see that, so it's not going to affect anything. But it can down the line. I mean, in the case of the bookcase, I later learned by paying attention to those details on the back, the entire structure was stronger. It was a better case, and it lasted for years longer than it would have otherwise.
Yeah, and it's amazing when you're a craftsperson like that. It just blows me away how people can do stuff that's so well. I mean, I really am a total klutz, and if I try and use a hammer, I'm probably going to hit my finger. But my brother makes furniture. He's made his own darkroom. He's made all kinds of other things. And one of the things that he did was up in Vermont, my sister had a house. The floor was a little bit warped, and he did the cabinets for it. And he actually just shaved off the bottom of the cabinet so it fit in there perfectly. And you wouldn't even notice unless, you look down and saw that it's uneven at the bottom, but it fits absolutely perfectly in there. And it's just paying such attention to detail to get that done. And he made furniture for us after we got married, which is almost 40 years ago. And we still have the dressers and things like that he's done. It's amazing things. So.
Exactly. It's, you pay attention to those details and the quality stands out. So what other thing, you said you had a tip sheet. What other things do you have on that sheet?
Pursue your passion. Everybody's got passions, things that they love to do or that they're very interested in. And especially these days, we didn't grow up with the benefit of being able to spend hours a day on the internet, but people today do. And if you could take some of that time when you're on the internet doing Facebook and all that other stuff and take a look at things that might interest you and start thinking of how you can get involved, maybe doing those things, whether it's for a profession or for a hobby or something like that, it's really, really important to get involved in that because it will really, really make you enjoy doing whatever else you're doing too, whether it's the job or anything else, because you have things to look for. So pursue your passion.
Right. The fact is, pursuing your passion is actually a relatively new concept. I mean, for generations, people did whatever job they could. They broke their back 40, 60, 80 hours a week because the only goal of the job was to make money. And of course, they wanted to make the money to improve the rest of their life. And now we've really learned that you have to take your whole life, in total. Your work, your life, your kids, your family, it all works together. So if you find something you're passionate about, you may be spending 60 or 80 hours a week doing it. But if you love doing it, you don't mind. It's not this grind. And it helps your mindset, and it improves everything about your life.
Right. And, talking about wishing you'd known this in the past and so on. I mean, how many people do you know that because their father was a lawyer, they had to become a lawyer, or because their father was a doctor, they had to become a doctor, this and that, whatever. And they go all the way through college and whatever. And they say, why did I do that? I don't even enjoy doing this kind of thing. That's these expectations that are hanging over your head, as opposed to saying, well, what do I really want to do?
All right. Historically, people didn't make decisions like that. They, going back, centuries, people were actually born into certain occupations. In fact, there are still to this day last names that you can trace back to a specific occupation that they were in. Now we have the freedom to choose. We can make the decision to find something that's going to make a difference in the world that we enjoy. And it helps improve your mindset so much because you're not dreading going to work. It's not, that overwhelming feeling that, I have to do this. If you're doing something you're passionate about, yes, you have to do it to get the work done, but you like doing it.
Yeah, along those lines, obviously one of the tips is money saved is money earned. Putting money away is your working and so on and so forth for different things like retirement. But the kind of the things that go hand in hand with that is planning your budget so that you can make some time for yourself, make some memorable moments, maybe go on vacation when you want to do this in an organized fashion, because all those things are so important. Take time to go out and see another country or do this, and just plan that. And it will make everything a whole lot better for you while you're doing this, instead of just putting money away for the sake of putting money away. And it'll probably help you put money away better because you have something to plan for.
Yeah, you definitely want to plan, but a penny saved is a penny earned is something that so many people misunderstand. And I was watching a biography of Warren Buffett, and he was talking about when he learned about the power of compound interest. And it's the difference between, having your money in an envelope, on a bookshelf, or putting it to work for you in a savings account, in an investment account. Because yes, especially with an investment account, there is risk involved, but your money is actually growing. It's doing something. And there are so many people that think, well, I can't invest. I don't have enough. And for a long time, this was true. You needed large minimum investments to get into the stock market, things like that. That's not the case anymore. In fact, there is an app called Robinhood. And this app is actually the front end of a brokerage. And you can invest. You can buy one share of any stock. You can invest with just the money for that one share. And that could be $10, $25, or $200, depending on what stock you're buying. But you can buy one share. You can buy two shares. You can build your portfolio piece by piece whenever you have $25, $30 that you've put aside. And there's no brokerage fees on this. Now, I always recommend caution when investing. Do your homework. Talk to somebody who knows the stock market. Don't just jump in. But these apps, now you have brokerages like Schwab that, if you've seen the commercials, they're all on this race to the bottom for the lowest possible fee. And in some cases, there's no fee to invest. And these are things you should look into, because money you're putting into this is money that's working when you're not. And when you get, an interest payments from a savings account, or dividend payments from a stock portfolio, that money goes back in, and then you get more interest on that interest and more dividends, on that dividend if you reinvest it. And that's how money grows. If you take a look historically, nobody has ever gotten rich from their 9-to-5 job. It's always the entrepreneur who comes across a great product. It's always the investor who puts his money in the stock market. And even the entrepreneur that comes across that, the way they make all of that money is from people investing in them and then going public in the stock market, valuing them. So that investment point of view, that knowing to save, knowing to invest, is so important. And the younger you do it, the more effective it is. So that's like the definition of, if I knew then what I know now. If you start investing, if you start saving at age 20, you are literally millions of dollars ahead of someone who doesn't start until age 50.
Absolutely. And one of the tips for those of you who are young, and it's never been easier to do this, and there's never been more opportunities, but starting your own business while you're young, even if you're working for somebody else, is a great way to invest in your own future. And the bottom line is, I wish I'd known this stuff. This is all learning experiences. So the more you learn, even if you're failing at this and that going on, there are lessons learned. They're going to help you be more successful moving ahead. Plus, it's a lot of fun doing that. So It's really important to take a look at that side of things too. There are a lot of different ways to invest, but if you're working for, a big company that has matching programs for putting things away in your 401k and so on and so forth, there's all different kinds of way to do this kind of thing. But the bottom line is you should start doing something, because the power compound interest really is amazing once you start taking a look at the charts.
It really is. So what else is on that sheet?
Take time out for yourself. We talk a lot about mindfulness and contemplation and so on and so forth, but really, when you're stuck in the day-to-day bustle, you should take time every day to just appreciate what you have. And that's something that I've learned over the last few years, because I've lived in a really nice house with a beautiful backyard for the last 30 years. And it's probably only the last 5 or 10 years that I appreciate just looking out into the woods off my deck and just appreciating all that kind of thing, getting into the mindfulness thing and contemplating, doing a little bit of meditation and so on and so forth. But it's so important to just appreciate everything that's around you. It helps you put all the hustle bustle and everything else in perspective, because that's always going to be there for you. And it has been for millions of years, and it will be for millions of years after we're gone. Appreciate it.
Yes. Taking the time out for yourself is very important for your own mental well-being. This constant stress that people are under, you need to take the time to relax and deal with it. There was a recent study that came out. I think it was 72% of all people that have a 9-to-5 job and work for a company don't take all of their vacation time, because we're so worried about, well, if I leave, they'll realize they can do the stuff without me, or I want to get everything done, and I just don't have the time to take that vacation. This is vacation that people have earned, that's theirs to take, and they're not taking it. And what happens is it leads to burnout. People can't handle that level of stress. We were never meant to. You need to take time out and take a vacation.
Yeah, vacation. Take a weekend. Something you need.
Take it, take an hour or two, during the day, at the end of the day, to pay attention to what you need. The bottom line of that is, if you don't take care of yourself, nobody else will.
Absolutely. Another good one is, don't compare yourself to others. How many problems has that caused over the years, trying to compare yourself when there's really nothing you can do about it? It's only something that's fabricated in your own mind. You can't get worried about what other people think about you. All you can do is just be your best self. So it's really, really important to throw that thing out, because if you start comparing yourself and you're finding faults and so on and so forth, all they are is fabricated in your head, and they're probably not true. So do not waste time on that. That's past stuff, or it's thinking about the future. And the bottom line is, if you stop worrying about the past and the future, you have what the only true moment is, which is the now. And that's a really, really important thing to realize.
All right. Comparing yourself to somebody else. Part of the problem with this is you don't really know what that other person is going through or what they've done. So comparing yourself to them, you're not comparing apples to apples. There are differences that you may not see and that may not be obvious. I was actually thinking about this over the weekend in a grander scale. I was reading an article about the London Underground, and they were talking about all of the things the London Underground does that the New York City subway system doesn't, and how much better the London Underground is to the New York City subway. Now, granted, the New York City subway right now is going through a lot of problems. However, one thing I noticed is that the article never took into consideration that the New York City subway, one, has approximately 850 miles of track compared to 250 for the London Underground. And this New York City subway services 750 million people more than the London Underground. So that creates all different problems. So if you're comparing the two, you're not comparing apples to apples because they're really different. The same thing applies on a personal level. You don't know if you have the same advantages and disadvantages as someone else. You don't know if you have the same experiences. And because of that, you really can't compare because it's not the same. They may do something much better than you, but you may do something much better than them that you don't know about.
Absolutely. And right along those lines, figure out your own uniqueness and celebrate it. Instead of comparing yourself to others, try that one on. Keep track of your own victories. Commit to a lifetime of learning. It's so important to be working on yourself, and that's what a lot of people don't do because they're floating through life on a day-to-day basis. So you got to block in time to do all that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Judy Garland once had a quote. She said, "I would rather be a first-rate me than a second-rate somebody else."
Absolutely. First-rate Judy Garland was pretty darn good.
Right, and that's just it. You have to be the best you can be. And the only person you have to be better than is the person you are right now. You just want to get yourself better than you are now. Don't worry about what anybody else is doing, whether you're better or worse than they are. You're different. You're unique, and you should be.
Absolutely. And just keep on celebrating it, working on it. That's what's so important about ongoing personal development.
So we've talked about a fairly wide range of lessons. Is there any one lesson that you remember learning that you really looked back and went, "Oh, that would have made life so much easier if I'd known that earlier"?
I have a funny one.
Okay.
When I went to college, when I was in high school, I liked my sophomore biology class because the teacher was cool and it was fun. It was the first time I got involved in a lab and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So when I went to college, I decided to be a biology major. And the very first day, sitting in the chemistry class, they said, "Okay, if you want to be a doctor, you have to get a 3.9 GPA just to get into medical school." And it was right then and there that I said, wait a second, I don't even like hospitals. What am I doing sitting here?
Right.
So I became a business major my second semester freshman year and switched to accounting my sophomore year. So, when you're looking at, especially these days with the cost of college and so on and so forth, it's great, again, to take a look at different things that you're interested in, plan for that. And it's really no problem going in undeclared. But with the cost that people are paying today for college, I mean, my freshman year tuition was $4,000 at Providence College. I'm aging myself a little bit. But do your research ahead of time. That's why it's so important to start looking at things that you like to do. There's all kinds of options out there. So that's a funny one that happened to me.
Absolutely. And by the same token, when you go into something like this, don't be afraid to take on a challenge. I remember when I was in college, I had an undeclared minor in writing. I decided not to declare it because this way I could get to take any writing class I wanted rather than the ones they were prescribing. And one of the classes I took was humorous writing. And the course description was very clear that this was a writing course. You weren't going to be performing. You weren't going to be doing anything. It was just writing. And I signed up for that class. And the first day of class, the professor gets up and says, "You remember that course description you read that said this is just a writing class and that's what we're going to be focusing on?" And of course, we all nodded our head. And the professor said, "We lied to you. Your final exam is going to be a stand-up comedy routine that you will have to do in front of an audience." Which was very different from what we signed up in, and certainly not something I intended to do. But I decided to stick it out, and it turned out to be a lot of fun.
How was your routine?
I got an A in the class, so it must have been pretty good.
And it continues on Facebook to this day.
Absolutely. So we're coming up on the end of our time. Chip, what do you think is the one takeaway you want people to have from this episode?
Don't take life so seriously. Work on yourself, appreciate what you have. Do not worry about what other people think about you. And you are going to live life to the max, and you're going to make a big difference in a whole lot of people's lives, starting with you.
I like that. My big takeaway is learn all you can as early as you can. But when you do learn a lesson, don't regret not knowing it earlier. Take advantage of it when you learn it and keep moving forward. It's better to look forward than to look back. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch us every week at blogtalkradio.com/Success Showcase. You can also find us on the Apple Podcasts app and in the iTunes Store. Remember, make this week your best week ever and make next week even better. See you then.